The emphasis on motherhood can also be used, has been used, to relegate women to the private sphere rather than to the public sphere. However, in the Solomons, it's really notable that Women for Peace mobilised references to maternity to motherhood in ways that sought to legitimate their entry into the highly volatile and extremely public arena. So Alice Pollard actually expressly links the nurturing maternal role of women with the language of good governance and of the nation. Now, there's two Australian scholars who've noted that the strategies used by Women for Peace don't seem to have translated into greater political participation in the post-conflict period. By political representation, they seem to mean the participation of women in the National Parliament. These scholars place responsibility for this firmly at the feet of the women peacemakers. And they argue that their strategies were, quote, based on gendered stereotypes and that therefore they failed to challenge traditional power imbalances. In particular, they... Don't worry about it. In particular... Sorry. In particular, they write that, quote, it was the conceptualisation of women's activities as those of mothers and not of active citizens that led to their exclusion from the peace process, as they failed to challenge the dominant definitions and constructions of power and security, leaving in place the male-dominated political structure. Now, I have quite a few problems with this sort of analysis. Firstly, it blames women for their own subjugation and exclusion. It says that you framed your claims in the wrong way, so you can't expect to have a seat at the table of the National Parliament. It also undervalues the work of women as peacemakers and the risks that they might have been exposed to in doing that work. Attempts to empower women in Solomon Islands by both women and men are often associated with sanctions, including violence. And the strategies of Women for Peace were calculated to achieve particular ends and avoid certain risks. The analysis that I mentioned is also founded on particular assumptions about how we measure the empowerment of women. Why is involvement in Parliament used as our measure? Solomon Islander women might be more interested in other forms of empowerment, and these might in fact be occurring. And I'll actually come to this in the last bit of my presentation. The analysis also assumes that the conceptualisation of women as mothers is incompatible with the conceptualisation of women as citizens. However, as I mentioned, members of Women for Peace expressly elided the division between public and private, and they linked motherhood with citizenship. Finally, for the reasons that I've mentioned, I think that the analysis commits the kind of violence that's often been critiqued and highlighted by women of colour and post-colonial feminists. It basically frames Solomon Islander women as victims of their cultural and religious traditions